This section is going to be a continuation of the persuasion module that we just finished. Going to kind of flesh it out a little bit. First thing we want you to understand is very few people are really grown-ups. Now, we have a tendency to think because somebody is older, they look like a grown-up, but they're not really grown-ups. A lot of people, they're just big kids. And from an emotional standpoint, they have not really grown up. They just, on the outward appearance, have grown up. But emotionally and internally, they're still not there. So they are not actually very logical. And yet what we tend to argue with, or when we get involved with discussions with people or trying to persuade them, we take this logical approach and we think they should logically see the error of their ways and switch our position because we are logically correct. Unfortunately, most people are not logical. They are not non-emotional. They are not robots. They are not looking at everything intelligently. Most people are not willing to admit they're wrong, even if you can show them they're wrong. So we have a tendency to think we can convince people to our point of view by showing them all the real logical reasons. And that never works, or at least very rarely works. People do have pride. They can't admit they're wrong. They are not willing to admit, even if it's true to themselves, that they were wrong. And if you make them look bad, it's not going to be very effective from a people skills or people relationship point of view. People have envy. They are going to be jealous of other people. They have all kinds of misconceptions. They are not without misconceptions. They are wrong in their point of view of the world. They just are. And it's not just because your view is different. They're just people you're going to say to yourself, how do they get through life? They are just not the smartest or the sharpest tool in the shed. And yet they're cruising through life and they think they have all of these skills. And they think they're reasonable and willing to change, and they're just not. So going into this persuasion thing with the wrong preconceptions on all of these things is going to lead to a disaster. Now, earlier when we were doing those we had some of those phrases I said were from Ben Franklin. We gave you the Ben Franklin close with the kind of T account, advantages on one side, disadvantages on the other. Unfortunately, everybody hated Ben Franklin. When he was young and as a young adult and starting his way to success, he started from very modest means, ended up becoming the first millionaire in the colonies at the time. And unfortunately, early on, everybody hated him because he was very confrontational. He knew he was right. He was smarter than everybody else. And he let people know it. And so he would belittle his opponents. He viewed everyone as an opponent. And he loved to debate and crush you and prove you were wrong. People actually used to, and he talks about this in his autobiography, they would see him coming and cross the street in order to avoid having to have an interaction with Ben Franklin. Well, how did he go from that to one of the most successful people of his time period and the great diplomat that brokered peace treaties and was very significant in terms of importance in the colonies actually defeating Britain in the Revolutionary War. And it was through his diplomacy that he was famous, not his intellect or confrontational style. So how did he change? Well, he determined in order to get ahead, he was going to have to improve his people skills. So he very methodically went about coming up with a plan to do that. And one of the things was never directly contradict someone, even though every fiber of your being wants to tell them they're an idiot. Do not do it. It will not serve your purpose. So avoid any positive assertion, because if you say, I know, or this is always true, there is no common ground there. The other side is going to dig their heels in and say they know too. And now you can't settle that. So avoid, I know, this is true. Instead, put the I think, I believe, I could be wrong. Remember the I could be wrong technique. I imagine, and then I imagine many people, or the feel, felt, found. I understand how you feel. Others have felt the same way. But, and then put your logical point in. Ask a lot of questions. So instead of laying out your bullet points of all your logical arguments, ask them. I want to understand your point of view. Could you tell me why you think this? Or could you tell me a little more detail? What did you mean by that statement? These are all nice, soft questions. You say them in a slow, calm voice. And immediately the other side doesn't get confrontational. And that's what you're shooting for. Don't judge people. Don't say, well, gee, I'm better than they are. And no, agreement is always going to be better than arguing. So agreement is better than an argument. Now, if you're wrong, and you will be once in a while, some of us more commonly than others, but admit it. There is nothing more, how do I want to say it, ingratiating to someone as for you to admit you're wrong. People love it when you're wrong. Instead of if you never admit you're wrong, everybody is looking at ways to bring you down because you're so perfect. They want to crush you. They want to knock you off your pedestal. So if instead of having people looking all the time to find ways to kind of take you down, gee, whenever possible, you should even look for opportunities to admit you're wrong on small things and even on big things. If you're wrong, admit it. You misunderstood. It will help you in your people relations. And don't don't force them to drag it out of you. Do it quickly and easily. It's like the old bandage. You really screw up, instead of kind of letting it fester over time, just rip that bandage off. It hurts a little on the front end. Get it over with quickly in the open, and do it without looking like somebody just killed your puppy. The world goes on. People are wrong all the time. It's not that big a deal. Move on. And so admit you're wrong with enthusiasm, and I guarantee people will like you for it. You will start getting all kinds of favorable, you'll see the change in the attitude people have toward you. Now, the drop of honey principle, many of you probably have heard this before, but it is, be friendly to people. Smile. Give lots of compliments. Tell people they're doing a good job. This is, if you're a supervisor or you work with other people, as most people do, go out of your way to give people a compliment. And again, now be careful. I think I've mentioned this before. Again, don't do the personal appearance stuff. In today's world, that's kind of not acceptable. But look for behaviors that they did something right. Look for opportunities to tell them they are good. They love that. Remember, everybody's got that ego. Feed it. Feed the ego. try to show your common interest. The whole idea of the the form exercise, where you talk about family, occupation, recreation, all of that is designed so you can sort of identify if somebody goes through the form exercise. Invariably, they're going to have some interests in common with you. And if you have common interests, instantly people like you. People like themselves. So if they like something and you like something, now make sure it's genuine. If they mention bowling and you have never bowled, you like bowling, don't act like you do, because then you'll look phony, and they'll be able to tell. So just go with what works. Almost everybody has some common interests. If they mention they have 2 kids, hey, you happen to have 2 kids. They have 1 boy, 1 girl. You have 1 boy, 1 girl. Instantly, it gives you something to talk about. If my wife is talking to somebody and they mention they have horses, oh my gosh, they can go on for days talking about horses, because my wife has horses. And anytime my wife connects with anybody else who has horses, they can talk horses. They instantly like each other, as most people are that way. So what you're trying to do is identify some of those things. And whenever possible, offer to help people. Volunteer to help them. If you see somebody that you know something, they have a problem and you have an answer, help them. And not necessarily for money. Don't always make it about money. Just offer to help. Small things, big things, whatever. Because there's a concept in psychology called reciprocity. And when you help someone, they feel internally obligated to help you back. They got to settle the score, and you're up on them. The minute you help them, oh no, they have to help you back. And so if you help them with a little, this is actually a sales strategy. I won't go into the details of this now, but you want to offer someone a small gift. You give them a $2 premium gift, and they automatically now have to buy your $500,000 house that you're selling. It sounds silly. Reciprocity doesn't mean equal. It just means you did something for them, they got to do something for you. And if the next thing after you've helped them or given them something, if you ask them for a big thing, there's a better than even chance that they will give it to you. That's the principle in every sales situation where somebody offers you a free sample. The minute they offer you the free sample or the trial, the free experience of whatever, now you have to buy their stuff. That's the psychological. And you'll see there's a lot of pressure to do that, even when it doesn't logically make sense. Now, this all sort of started with good old Socrates, who's famous for asking questions. If you've ever had a philosophy class, you probably remember Socrates had the Socratic method, where he never really answered anything. He was always asking questions. And the basic principle is you want to start with get as much agreement. Remember, avoid arguments. And the way you do that, you find things you can agree on. And they can be small. Start small. What you're trying to do is get the yes, yes, yes. You want to get a series of yes answers to all your questions. And then at the end, the theory goes that when you ask them to make the sale or the big thing you're trying to persuade, if they've said yes 20, 30 times in the last 35 minutes, it is pretty hard for them at the end to just suddenly switch and say, oh, no, I don't want to buy that. Or no, I don't want to do that. If they've said yes, 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 chances are they're going to buy. Because when you get them saying yes, 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 they are seeing your point of view. And they're seeing that their point of view matches your point of view. And so then at the end, when they ask, it's going to be a very natural thing for them to agree with you. So go out of your way to agree with them on all of these small points. And you should be working on the big things. Work on methods of agreement as opposed to looking for areas of disagreement. Try to avoid ultimatums, saying it's my way or the highway. You don't want to certainly do that early. in your discussion with them. You want to avoid having them have to make a big decision that could go against you early in the process. Again, more very useful phrases. Wouldn't you like this to happen? Wouldn't you like this? Wouldn't you like it if the government lowered taxes? Wouldn't you like it if the world was a better place? You can preface almost anything with "wouldn't you like?" Don't you think? And this is how you get those small yeses. Don't you think it would be better if the unemployment rate was lower? Don't you think it would be better if there was lower inflation? Wouldn't you agree that that you can say, this is probably the only time you want to get into politics, is if you can say both sides are idiots. Wouldn't you agree that both sides should get along? And almost everybody says yes to that. So these are useful in the standard sales implication, but also much broader than that.